12/7/17 VOLTHA call, and today we're going to be talking about what the architecture and framework that would be needed to incorporate or supporting OpenOMCI. And so that's one of the candidates that we're looking at for 1.3 or for a March release. And I believe Sean has some material we'll have. I think is going to be primarily some open discussion and trying to figure out next steps, path forward, and what is involved, and ideas that may be sourced from the community for how to proceed.
Hey, good morning. So we have, let me see who is it. Yeah, we have a pretty good participant here. I have to say, even though working on VOLTHA for a while, I still quite not understand this box, the OMCI box. In the, I think this is the architecture for the VOLTHA, and then with the XPON config implementation included. However, the OMCI, let me say, application or module here has always been within the VOLTHA core. So one of the questions I probably would like to understand, and hopefully, you know, the people in the group here, the TST members, understand, you know, what is this OMCI? Is that a library or I think there's a set of files under the repository describing the OMCI entry related stuff.
So Sean,
yes.
So just briefly, we can go into more detail maybe, but the OMCI is really nothing more that exists today is nothing more than some minimal methods to parse and generate OMCI messages. It's really a command and response type of support right now. So you have helper functions to generate, construct an OMCI message when you provide the contents, and then you have helper messages to deconstruct a message and upon parsing, upon receiving the OMCI message. And it's a good point to bring that up because that is something where we are going to need probably a more full-featured OMCI stack. Historically here in our company, we have a lot more meat to that. It's a stack that involves state machines.
Right.
And high availability, not high availability, but resiliency, retries, and handling failure cases and those types of things.
And I'm trying to bring up the repos. The reason why I'm asking this is you know, of course, you know, when I see OMCI, I wonder whether this if we want to support OpenOMCI, this is the focus area of everybody, you know, of the community need to start working on. So Phillips, you know. Maybe we'll get back to that a little more detail about this a little bit later. So AT&T, we, you know, most of the services provider we talked about is you know, the ONU actually probably the most expensive component among you know, when we deploy GPON and the coming up XGS PON. So we believe the OpenOMCI will open up the market, and then we'll have the more cost-effective effect for deploying XGS PON. So AT&T spent a huge amount sometime, I think in 2016, and then we reviewed ITU, the G199, 988, sorry, 988 documentation, and then we abstract a set of the standard ME, and then from those 76, as I cannot talk today, 67. By the way, we're in the California time, and I have a very long late night last night. 67 MEs, and then there are, I believe, AT&T OMCI spec basically make 15 of them become mandatory. So all the OMCI content are standardized, but except our specification just make sure those 15 MEs as required. And then here we have that.
Hey, Sean.
Yes.
So just to be clear, that's the first I've seen that term used. You only modified the status from optional to mandatory, right? You didn't actually modify the ME contents or the definition, right?
I believe that's the only change. That's right.
That's the only thing I've ever seen. Okay.
So it's not like we modify a huge bunch of the content. No, we didn't change the standards, the setting of the OMCI messages, but even the content of the ME. We just make those ME required.
Okay, good. So you might want to update that statement because that.
Which statement? Oh, ME are modified. The attribute ME are modified. Okay. Maybe I need to double check, but this is what I was told.
It's clear in the actual OpenOMCI document from AT&T. It says that only some MEs were changed from optional to modified. That's all it says. I mean, optional to mandatory.
Correct, and that's my understanding too. So, of course, the document is quite intensive. I have to say, I have to admit, just sitting there reading it myself, I can never finish it. What a product owner I am. But so this is a background of I'm assuming even maybe there are some modification of the ME, but I think everything's laid out. A lot of effort was put in to put that specification together. So I think the information captured are very clear. As I said, these are the 50. Yes.
So I was going to say, I mean, I guess if there is already a stack, I guess this is kind of relevant, right? I mean, these are the changes to what the OMCI stack would be, but I guess starting from zero, I mean, I guess you still have to implement all the other mandatory MEs and attributes, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and I was wondering, is there a are we going to kind of prioritize the functionality in terms of use cases? For instance, is for configuration management, are you going to do like service flows would be like a high priority? I guess is there a kind of a priority in terms of implementation that's been defined?
The priority, if we're saying the priority among, I would assume all the mandatory ones will be, will be assumed to be already implemented by most of the OMCI stacks. So I think these are the so if they are already okay. Of course, I believe today's OMCI supported from the VOLTA is not a full set of the mandatory OMCI.
That's correct.
So first of all, we need to review what has been supported, right? So what is supported today, and then so then and then the missing set, we say then we have to prioritize that. I think we can do that.
I don't think that's a lot of work. It is work, but not a lot. There's maybe 15 to 20 MEs that are supported today from what I glanced at. I'd have to pull it back up.
So let me see. I'm trying. That's in the repo, right?
Yeah, it's just under. I'd have to look it up, but yeah, it's right there.
It's repo, and then it's under, I think it's called
There's no
experiment.
OMCI directory under core, I believe, maybe.
Anybody know where the?
I mean, I can look it up.
It should be under extensions, I believe.
Extension.
VOLTHA extensions.
I'm looking now.
Okay.
Yeah, he's right.
So they are messages, frames, entities, and I think definitions, right?
Yep.
So I took a look of this. Yeah, the content is it's not a huge. Well, it has some information in here. So do we have but is okay, so we have these existing files supporting the OMCI. Is that correct? Is if we can expand this and based on the ME defined within the AT&T spec, then it is sufficient? What I'm saying, is that the first step, or my question, sometimes I don't understand, is because the OMCI is ONU dependent, right? So if the whatever defined within the VOLTHA framework is basically translate. Am I correct? Is basically translate what ONU can support, and then send the message to the OLT. Is that a correct statement? So what I'm saying is,
yeah, I mean, that's generally correct. Of course, the OLT is completely transparent for OMCI communication. It's just a tunnel between the ONU adapter to get the OMCI messages to the ONU. So yeah, the first step, bare minimum, would be to flesh out this OMCI entities to support all of the MEs all 67. So that would be the bare minimum. But I think most would argue that more support needs to be added, such that this isn't just a bare bones command and response type of thing. There needs to be more of a full stack, really. There needs to be resiliency built into the OMCI protocol.
But does it mean that the ONU also need to be able to support it?
Sure, yeah, but that's what your OpenOMCI spec demands, right?
So does it mean basically the ONU supplier need to support the ONU with the software and firmware supporting these the OMCI stack based on the AT&T OMCI specification?
Exactly.
Because the VOLTHA would, or even the ONU adapter would not rewritten or modify whatever provided by the ONU, right?
Right. The ONU must support it.
Okay.
The adapter can send anything. Generally, what we see in some of our older products is a much more well-rounded and full-featured OMCI stack that actually talks to an ONU, does a MIB reset, and then does a MIB upload of all however many hundreds of MIBs MEs that it supports. It uploads the whole MIB, and it's tons of them. And so you know what it supports at that point, and you adapt dynamically and can provision it based on that knowledge. What we have right now in VOLTHA is more of a hard-coded set of here's 20 MEs that everybody supports, the bare minimum amount to get data passing. Not any type of dynamic behavior.
Well, although I guess that presents a problem for pre-provisioning, right? Because if you don't have an idea what the ONU supports when you're pre-provisioning, all of a sudden everything you've configured may, fail, right? So it may be good to have some profile.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I would like to think that AT&T or Sean's proposal with the OpenOMCI spec resolves that. I mean, here it is. Here's our 67 MEs that we demand if you're going to be part of a VOLTHA deployment. So that's
right. So
there's got to be a draw the line somewhere, and that would be it, in my opinion.
So basically, I think Sean is if we these 67 identified and as a minimum set of the OMCI, how do I call that box, module or application or library? So if that 67 set is there, and then all the ONU, at least AT&T interact with, will need to support those 67. Would that resolve your concern about the pre-provision?
Possibly. I'm not sure about the impact of. I mean, for XGS-PON, I think yes. I think for NG-PON2, that may still be an issue because one OLT doesn't know what another OLT is provisioned on the ONU until that OLT becomes, an owner of the ONU, right? So, but yeah, I think that goes a long way to supporting it, to resolving those issues. If we make that statement for XGS-PON, obviously that's not something you do for, say, GPON, but for the new ONTs coming out, I think, yeah, that's probably a viable approach. Unless, at some point along the way, we say, okay, we need a cheaper XGS ONT, and okay, it's acceptable to have, less TCONs, less GEM ports, less capabilities. I mean, in that case, then you need to resolve, either you have a profile for that ONU supports, or you do the MIB upload and figure out, what resources it has.
On this dial, so the MIB upload had been mentioned a couple of times here. So during the MIB upload, where the VOLTA will be involved for that process?
Well, after the MIB reset, you basically can upload the MEs that are created automatically by the ONU, right, and figure out what resources it has. But again, if from the provisioning interface, you'd have to build in limits on what you can provision, I guess, based on the ONU type.
Yeah.
But again, yes.
Sean, I was going to put something in there. So that's addressing, your point about, what is that box? So, like what Philip mentioned right now, currently that box is just kind of an extension support library, and, that the ONUs can call to, have, some classes and code they can use to construct, the OMCI messages that they want to send. So it's just kind of a library. But I think what what my perception of this is, that box really should be an extension, an extension for VOLTA that provides OMCI microservice that ONU adapters can register to, and then that thing would basically implement, the state machine, the MIB upload, would basically do all the mechanics that would normally be done and would commonly be done for anything that's OpenOMCI there, and so that kind of becomes a service, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that.
Yeah, and I think quite a while back, I think Sharisa was from Nokia had kind of chimed in on that. That's how they visualize that's a proper architectural positioning in there, so that any ONU adapter, if it wants to use the VOLTA OMCI service, right, the OMCI microservice to manage the ONU, it can, or the ONU adapter could have its own thing in there, to support, kind of what's being done now with, if there's some type of legacy equipment that needs to be adapted or whatever. So, the positioning's right there. It still gives the ONU adapter the freedom to do something simple like send 25 hard-coded messages down like it does now using that extension library, or it could use a full-fledged OpenOMCI stack that's an extension, a part of VOLTHA. If you need it, you have an OMCC in there that needs to have OMCI service on it, right? Then that's where it is. And that should be common. So it is debugged in common. It should, once the OpenOMCI, the specifications are all agreed to, like exactly what MEs should be out there, that thing could query all the MEs, make sure that, everything that is supposed to be supported is, and then it can, interact in a common way. So that's what I think that box should be defined as, from the architectural point of view.
Right. Okay. No, I remember the Srisha's comment before. Yeah, I think I think there was one time we also talk about when the ONU come up, they will try to. There should be some mechanism. Maybe some ONU can. Maybe the default is they will go through the process of talking to the adapter which work with the OpenOMCI first. If that doesn't work, then fall back to a more ONU type specific adapter. No, so Kim, thank you for that comment. So it seems it seems like the OLT adapter doesn't seem to be playing too big a role in this kind of for the OpenOMCI support. Is that a true statement?
Yeah, Philip mentioned that is everything is just proxying the messages, through some type of, adapter and equipment specific, mechanism, and that is in place today. And Philip, you could, correct on that, but I could speak for the in the EdgeCore case, that is just a pure proxy. It's just taken the message. It uses an inter adapter communication mechanism. I believe that gets it across. It just passes it transparently. So the ONU that OLT adapter for EdgeCore does not really have any knowledge of the ONUs out there.
Yeah.
So let me ask this question. It may be a crazy idea, but are we not headed towards the concept of a single common ONU adapter, so to speak, that we've kind of been describing here? If we start to implement all of this as a service and it's got an OMCI stack in it, it has the resiliency it needs, and it adheres to AT&T's OpenOMCI spec, I'm not seeing exactly the value of individual ONU adapters still existing, other than what Kim said about maybe you want to do your own thing and not use the service, I guess.
Right, Philip, and what would go with that is probably an adapter called OpenOMCI ONU, right? That you use that adapter, and then that adapter would bind out. You would have to have that adapter bind out to get the vendor IDs, right, that it wants to service. But so that would go right along with it. So if you're fully OpenOMCI compliant, you would use the OpenOMCI stack that is an extension of VOLTHA, and you would use that ONU adapter that is basically supporting what is defined by VOLTHA's OpenOMCI. Yep,
I agree.
And then if we have, like, for example, the OpenOMCI ONU adapter, because I think during the POC 3, right, even though we're using the same Broadcom implementation, for different manufacturer because the serial number differences. So we basically have to replicate the same ONU adapter 2 or 3 times to support TNW and Alpha Network, right? So will the vendor ID and serial number kind of the for the serial number registration, would that be so we probably need to find some way so we can decouple the vendor and the content of the ONU adapter separately, right? What I'm saying.
To respond to that, that is supposed to work in the device class in the ONU. You're supposed to be able to give a list of vendor IDs to support, and my experience is that just didn't work for some reason. You should be able to have one adapter and it should call for a list of all these vendor IDs, and it just might not be working. I don't know if PonSim didn't check that out. It looks correct. There's just probably a bug in there. It either only used the last one that was in the list or the first one or something. It didn't seem to be able to do the list match correctly, and it just might be a code coverage type of thing. But your mention of serial numbers in there, then I don't know if that's somebody else's opinion on that. I don't know if you matching things up by serial numbers as well to select the adapter. I don't know if that makes sense.
I believe a lot of. I hope I'm not derailing the talk here, the discussion here, because I guess ONU is based on the serial number to decide which ONU adapter it needs to. VOLTA is that VOLTA or ONU?
The vendor part. Yeah, the vendor
part, right?
The vendor part of that, it's using that to select which ONU adapter would get called. So there's not a tight binding between the ONU adapter and the OLT, but that is figured out by the VOLTA core will match those up once it's been registered. Okay.
And so the idea is we probably don't want to have OpenOMCI become vendor, like like a Broadcom OpenOMCI adapter and then Alpha OpenOMCI. That totally.
Well, at some point, there's going to come a point where there's going to be multiple ONU adapters probably claiming the same vendor ID, and a deployment or an integration will probably have to figure out how to resolve that, because I wouldn't think that all of those adapters would be potentially in play. There's some of them that are not commonly used, and then some that are very commonly used. But I think that's probably an implementation detail that has to get addressed down the road.
Okay. So I think what I got out, I have very bad memory. I'm probably going to go back then. Julie, if you can publish this recording soon, that'd be great. Sure. Is the we definitely need to complete the set of the MEs, currently basically hardwired in the VOLTA today, and then also is this box should be moved out as an extension or microservices, so is that it's a separate container or whatever is to move it out, or is something as a microservice outside of VOLTA, but we still need this component inside?
Well, the point is that it's still part of VOLTA. It's not like in the core all the time, right? It's an extension,
right?
Like other extensions are that can be, pulled in there, and things can use it. But I just want to distinguish it being it's not implemented in the VOLTA core. It's an extension, like another thing the core can support, if the ONU adapter actually makes reference to that, right? So just to distinguish that. So I think this needs to kind of break down into multiple parts. You've already mentioned some of them, like getting a handle on the OpenOMCI specification, right? What goes on in the ONU itself, what the ONU is required to support. And then there needs to be kind of an architectural proposal for how the OMCI, the OpenOMCI stack would be implemented. And that's the architectural proposal, right? Where the positioning of things are. And then from that, you go into some implementation details, okay, for, how is the ONU registered to use that thing? Where does the stack come from? Because you have to get, like Philip mentioned, you have to get state machines, and there's got to be a level of communication and robustness. And then there's another thing, I think, Sean Massette, you can respond to that, but it's just service provisioning, in general. I mean, you have all those MEs in there to make them do and set up the type of services that are needed is quite an important part, because just saying what MEs are there is fine, but you need to know what you have to do in order to create the type of, services that you want to actually, be there.
And sort of along those lines, it would be interesting to know and useful to know the use cases that are driving the requirement for each of these 67 MEs or the combinations of 67. Not only would it be interesting to know that, but that could be used by you and Julie to help drive priorities of when different ones get implemented. Some might not be needed now, some might be needed later, that type of thing.
It seems that we are pretty happy with the 20. Sorry. I think I do think the service providers should provide a feedback and a priority for the ME implementation. Eventually, all 67 need to be in there, but I think it's fair to provide the priority and urgency of which one need to be supported first. It seems like we for the field trial, the existing model, without OpenOMCI, it works today. So so I back to very basic function question back to you, Philip, again, is when you mentioned about the MIB upload, is that something between the OOT and hardware and ONU hardware, or does VOLTA play any role in that MIB upload at all?
VOLTA would play a key role because of the disaggregated architecture that we have. In the past, say, today's technology and past that's out there, a lot of what's in VOLTA now exists, of course, in the OLT hardware. So answering your question is a little difficult, but in the past it would be between the OLT and the ONU, and it would pull back all of the full MIB database and all the MEs that are supported into the OLT. It would process that and know the capabilities and adapt on the fly. Today, the OLT is essentially purely a conduit or a transparent proxy to get that information from the ONU into something in VOLTA, the ONU device adapter or whatever it may be, to get that information there, and then VOLTA can do whatever it wants to with it. We've talked about minimizing that or possibly doing something with that. But it is strictly bypassing the OLT at this point.
Right, Sean, the picture that we're looking at right there, OMCI, if that just says OMCI stack, let's say, so that would be the part in VOLTA that Philip is talking about. So that would have knowledge, that would pull all the MIB, do the MIB reset, the MIB uploads, dig through there, do all that So that whole role that a legacy OLT provided would have to be, part of this component here would be doing that basically.
But what about, okay, so let me okay, Kim, is because if today I have a VOLTA, right? I have one instance of VOLTA which has the edge core OLT with the Broadcom adapter, and then let's say Atran, okay, Atran OLT with Atran adapter and ONU adapter. Then, which means you have two different ONUs. So you are you saying the OMCI extension here have all the MIB, or at least compatibility of the MIB information for both of the different type of the ONU in here supported?
No, this would only be used by any implementations, an ONU implementation that would, want its, service to be provided by VOLTA. For example, for EdgeCore, of course, this needs to be up here. The OMCI stack is there, could use this service, right? But if the OLT itself has all the OMCI in it and, interaction with the, the ONUs, then that ONU adapter, is specific for that. There would be one specific for that use case. So this would not mean that all ONU adapters are required to use the VOLTA OMCI stack in there. I mean, they're certainly free to, to implement OpenOMCI within their own ONU adapter, but the common one in VOLTA, I think is what we're talking about. So okay. I don't think we want to. I don't think the idea is to restrict or require any particular implementation in VOLTA, because we have to be flexible enough, to support all the possible use cases there. But that's, I put a lot, been thinking about this for architectural positioning for a while, and what Philip is mentioning, right? It does, give the capability to, to implement that, like, keep the OMCI implementation in the adapter if we want, ONU adapter if we want, like a lightweight proof of concept thing like we're doing now with the OMCI library, the extension library. That's fine, that can be used. But I think for the bigger picture, what we're talking about is support for this kind of thing in the virtualized, VOLTA, right? And that requires, the full capabilities of whatever you would have in, in the legacy equipment is eventually has to move there. And then that thing has to be designed correctly so that it operates as a microservice, because there will be a lot of states for all those ONUs that are being managed, and that thing needs to be designed correctly so that the state is kind of, a thing that, between the ONU adapter and the OMCI microservice, that, there's efficient, data exchange, because, that OMCI microservice could be dealing with a lot of ONUs that all have their own individual state that have to be maintained. And so there's going to be some thought that has to go into that on how exactly does that get implemented so that it can scale and it can, replicate, along with, the rest of VOLTA as it, appears in a swarm and such. So that's kind of the high level things I've been thinking about on that.
One point that I want to add is we need to remember that all the adapters will eventually go into their own microservice.
Mm-hmm.
So that we should take that into consideration when we are designing the OMCI, the OpenOMCI.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good point, Ken, because that is the direction there. So we have to make sure that that communication stays efficient as well, and it might mean that might have some effect on how that OMCI microservice, actually works in order to deal with the containerized adapters. Because it's a different story right now. It's a little bit simpler, I think, to deal with it how they are now. But once they go out to containers, then, it puts another aspect to, the operations.
Okay, so I like to learn from example. And if I put you guys on the spot, I apologize for that first. So for the edge core and the ONU adapter today, right? So my first question, I believe this OMCI extension is playing a big role on that, at least on parsing messages, right? Messaging in and out. No?
Okay, so this box that we're looking at right there, it doesn't exist as a separate, service or facility in VOLTHA. It's just a library that is common that can be called by any ONU adapter, and we have adapters calling that, but there's really it's nothing more than kind of a message construction factory, right?
Yeah,
so
helper methods.
Right, and the adapter has to know exactly what it needs to, to make and send down there and all that stuff. So, and there is variance, how that works between adapters, but the mechanisms are the same. So I really wouldn't call that OMCI there as a full-fledged OMCI service in VOLTHA right now.
Okay, but so I believe at least for the edge core and the Broadcom ONU adapter, this library has been utilized for sure. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. I know the AdTran and Broadcom ONU adapter use it, and I believe some others might. Philip, do you know?
I don't know of others, but we definitely use it at AdTran. Yeah, I don't know of others. There's others that haven't been open sourced. So I don't know what they do.
I think it's used by simulated VOLTHA, by parsing, by
And Naren, are you guys also using this OMCI library?
Yes, but not everything.
Not everything. Okay. So it is okay. Why am I asking this? Okay. So I think to beef it up is probably the I wouldn't say the easiest, but most straightforward things we can do, right? To implement, to compare what is in there and what addition we need. And then again is I'm trying to see, even though the OMCI stuff, that's still very low level. It's mostly hardware related, physical related stuff. So we have not really dilute the purpose of the VOLTHA. What I'm saying is VOLTHA is hardware abstraction. So I think by introducing the AT&T or OpenOMCI spec, we are not alter the intent of the framework too much, other than to augment the framework so we can support more dynamic and fuller feature set. I think that I just want to make sure this is okay. Sorry if my statement doesn't make any sense. Anybody else has any comment regarding to what is the target framework would look like to support a fuller set of OMCI and I'd probably say common OMCI library for majority of the ONU adapters? or I just say OpenOMCI. Maybe that's
right. Yeah, that's important qualification. Yeah, for the OpenOMCI, stack. Right, that was good.
And Philip, do you have do you guys have additional suggestion regarding to the framework? I don't know. We know exactly what framework is support today.
Yeah.
I mean, or we're marching into. I reach out to OpenCon. OpenCon. They work with Broadcom ONU very directly. They may have some proposals, so I reach out to them, see whether they want to bring their proposal in the TST meeting next week. I have not getting by the response from them yet. And I also chat with Shad and Sarav yesterday at ONAF. I don't know whether they are on this call today. I'll do a better invitation to them, reminding them next time. But I think this is a very good discussion, even though right now in my brain I still don't quite grasp. I know we need to prioritize those 67 MEs. I know.
Well, I think. Sorry, go ahead.
No, Sean. Yeah.
I was going to say, I think we need to prioritize the functionality that would be realized by those OMCI MEs, right? So,
yeah.
So for instance, just a basic, what is a service, for instance? I want to create a service, right?
Yeah.
Like, is that service may be one TCON, one gem? It may be one TCON, 2 gems, 4 gems. What does that service look like? How do I define that? If I'm using a pbit mapper, how do I define what my pbit to gem port mapping is? I mean, it's the high-level management constructs that drive the use of the OMCI that needs prioritization, definition.
Yeah, I think that's the way to approach it too.
Back to defining use cases.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And that'll dictate what we need to do first, in what order, and why. It may identify that some were missing. I don't know how well it was thought through. It may identify superfluous for MEs. And keep in mind, Sean, that one thing. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
But that doesn't affect in the framework, right? The architecture and framework, does it? We need to support those services, but isn't that just determine what ME need to be in there in what form?
That's true. You can do that. You could also reverse the order, and you could literally use what is there today. If you have a really high priority use case that comes along, and you can just extend exactly what we have today, and extend that to new MEs and support it today. It isn't architecturally sound, and it doesn't provide the resiliency I think you need, but at least it would be functional for lab trials. So
no,
you could reverse the order.
No. Okay, yeah. What I'm saying is one gem port, let's say one gem port 2 TCONs, or yeah. So Sean's example, those specific use cases, right? Those are the use cases, but but one gem port one TCON versus one gem port multiple TCONs, would that affect in the determination of the architecture?
No, it shouldn't.
No, yeah, I agree with that. I think the mechanics of getting all this stuff and our architectural, placement is one thing, but Sean Nissette's point was very good. Sean Ying, I think I saw on your presentation, when you scrolled it a little bit, from your top 2 slides, there was the big complicated boxes, right, with all the I don't know if it was that one, but it was the one that had all the service flows and how all those go. The MEs basically just give you the control elements to set all that stuff up, and getting the mechanics of that, it is one thing, but to actually, I think this might be the one.
Right. I think it's the ME relation diagrams are in here.
Right, and it was maybe up at the beginning of this or something. They were quite, they were huge. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, see, you use those mechanisms to set all this stuff up, but at the end of the day, it's like what Sean was referring to. You have to get all this, you know, service mapping all set up, and then that is kind of, you know, a little bit higher up, right? The, you know, the flow decomposer, you know, has to come through and, you know, get all these, you know, things instantiated and check and make sure they're all properly in place and in service and all that. So, you know, it's kind of layered, you know, from, you know, the mechanics that we have to implement just to get the mechanisms in so we can control it. And then it's like, how is this stuff interacting, you know, a little bit up towards, you know, the higher levels of VOLTA and the service setup and things.
Right. I mean, there's no way to drive this particular data service configuration currently from a management interface. I can say, okay, I'm going to hard code this. This is my AT&T data service, and it looks like this. But there's no way to drive that from a management perspective, not completely.
Okay, you mean I'm not sure I quite get it.
So let's go ahead. Is that Philip or?
No,
Sean,
go ahead.
We do like a raise your hand kind of thing.
No, I guess.
So if you look at, let's say I want to create an AT&T data service that looks like this model here. So this is
non-integrated. This is non-integrated.
Yeah,
the SFU. You have RG.
Yeah, I have a uni. I don't have a VEEP. But in this case, I'm saying, okay, I'm going to use the exponent interface. I'm going to say, okay, I have this TCON that's associated with this ANI. I have these 4 gem ports associated with my Ethernet interface, but I don't really have a way to say, okay, what's my p-bit mapping to configure this p-bit map?
But isn't that captured in there? We have the p-bits noted above the different.
It is, but it's hard coded. I mean, I can create.
Okay, got it.
I can say, okay, this is how my system behaves when I create a data service for AT. But can I create this for different operators or say these, AT&T wants a different kind of service.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we can use the OMCI library we have right now to create this. I mean, as long as we know what it is and just it's hard coded.
So I guess the where to put the OMCI block. I guess when I think about framework architecture, about VOLTA, right? So and we'll probably need to talk about this one later. Where is that? My brain. So sorry. I guess there's no urgency to pull this out as a microservices as an extension, right? So out of the VOLTA. We can do that when we pull all the adapter out.
Why would you do that?
Why would I do what?
Why would you pull OMCI out?
No. When I say as an extension or as in its own container or something like that, would that Kim, is that what the because all the ONU and OOT adapter will become its own container, right?
There's clear reasons for that, so that they're not in the the versioning and build system of VOLTA core, VOLTA as a whole. I don't understand why you'd want to pull a core service out though, like OMCI.
what does pulling a core service out? All right. So what I was talking about is moving away from the OMCI library, that extensions library, to something that operates as OMCI stack. Right. It's a service that can provide state machines and all that stuff, and the threads and the bindings to the ONU adapters when they are in their own service containers. That is the reason for pulling it out, because it's common. It doesn't have to be like built in as pulled into the code as part of any particular ONU adapter and then run as service threads in the adapter. It could it could be out as a common service, right? Going along with the microservice service architecture of VOLTHA, and but there's got to be some thought and analysis put into how to properly implement that. But I think what we kind of need is maybe an architectural proposal that just shows some of these boxes that says, here's kind of how we are now, and then here's a proposal for an OMCI that exists. Here's where you place the stack architecturally in VOLTHA. That might help with to get the common understanding. So it's kind of like what we did with the Edge Core framework, is we kind of had an architecture in there and some pictures so that we can talk about it and point to things.
No, I think that is definitely the goal. I think the content, our ME expansion, make it larger. I think those are. My simple mind is straightforward, right? Just expand them. But I think we definitely need a robust and solid framework in order to support, make this OMCI component more how to say that, prominent, official, or whatever.
Well, it gives credibility to the hardware abstraction for an OLT if you have a OMCI service in there. I just don't see how you cannot have it in there as part of the hardware abstraction.
Yeah, no.
So we are about out of time too, so I just want to do a time check there. I think we have a couple activities that probably need to be going on in parallel. And so Sean, one would be working with the service providers to do a prioritization effort looking at use cases, and that could be done, I think, in parallel to work from folks on the in the community putting together architectural proposal. And then I think we could look at that at a future meeting, a similar one to this, but then we'd have a time reserved for the presentation of that architectural proposal and review on a meeting. And then I think that may get the ball rolling on some of the work. So.
Do we think next Thursday will be too soon for the architecture proposal? I don't have proposal, so I'm looking for the community to provide proposal. Except if I can go, if I can get OpenCon to talk next week.
By next week, not sure.
How about? I would like to have. Would that be reasonable to have the framework defined by the end of this year?
I'm thinking more of before even an architecture is being looked at. It's we need to be able to say this OpenOMCI, what are the features that we want it to have? Because currently it's a library, but it seems that it won't be a library, and later on it will have a lot of it will be a service. So maybe the first step is to try to figure out what are the services that this OpenOMCI will do, and then later on, after that, then come up with an architecture to map out those services.
I think Ken and Sean, I guess my simple mind is the servers, right? It's much higher level in some way. So I guess of course, in order to deliver those services, then you have to have these the support, right? And you need to support those. And Ken, I think that's fair. That is. I wonder whether maybe the document itself, the last few diagram, maybe have some information. Maybe I will look into that more carefully, and then maybe Sean, if you don't mind, I'll reach out to you to go over some of those diagrams also. But is that too cruel to have a follow-up meeting on the 21st? Oh, Julie will be on vacation.
Sorry. You heard me starting to laugh in the background. I know we're targeting to close the sprint on the 22nd as well, so people will be wrapping up documentation also.
Okay.
So it's a lot of, we have parallel efforts going on at this time, but if there are resources, that's great.
Yeah, I think it might be a little tough to, getting towards the end of the year.
Okay.
My initial thought, and so Sean, this may not work with your timing, but when I was kind of making notes on the side here, I was thinking a first step that may be achievable by the end of the year is to do that first step of a comparison and looking at the current OMCI library and see how that compares with what is in the OpenOMCI spec today. See what the differences and gaps are. I think that may be a realistic thing to achieve by the end of the year. I don't know if others want to chime in. You can let me know if that seems reasonable or unreasonable. And then I was thinking in the background. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that would be pretty easy.
Right.
I think what that would consist of is just kind of like 67 minus 25 or whatever MEs are not there. So that's pretty doable probably.
That's what I thought, a little easy snapshot of what's done. Because I think there was some discussion about there could be some things that, if for putting together a quick field trial or something, there could be some enhancements to the library to fill in any gaps, but that'd be kind of a very preliminary first step on the path.
Well, that gets me to another point I'd like to mention, exactly what Julie just said along those lines. Sean, I think it would be useful for the rest of us if you could put together something or articulate services that drive these things. I mean, surely they exist, so we're not designing this thing backwards. Someone had to have come up with these 67 MEs, and they surely didn't pick them out of a hat. So I would like to think there's use cases or services that have been defined or thought out, and nothing in gross detail is required at this point, but it would be kind of neat to see the services that AT&T is foreseeing in general, and then we can kind of see how that falls out with what's missing or what's there.
Okay. No, I think that, as I said, that's a very fair question.
And my thought, Sean, was that could kind of go on through the rest of this year as well, including perhaps some prioritization with efforts with other service providers. And then hopefully in parallel, we'll have community folks who have the expertise starting to think about and in the background maybe start pulling together proposals. And then at the beginning of the year, we could dive in with maybe some targeted sessions in January. That was my thought. Because I think doing it by the end of the year is going to be tricky.
Yeah. How about this? One thing is if I can pull the OpenCon to come in, but one of the session during the TST call, I'll try that. So that's one thing.
And I think that's fine, because that would be one proposal or one presentation from someone, and
Right.
it gives another data point to the community to consider.
Right.
I think that's fine.
And then the oh God, I have a very good idea. Suddenly it disappeared.
Doesn't count if you can't remember it. Sorry.
No, I was saying maybe we can start thinking about putting. Oh yeah, so basically maybe we need to provide a requirement is OpenOMCI. What do we really want that to do? First of all, we want to support multiple ONUs, right? So maybe again, what do we want this OpenOMCI extension or services or library to achieve, right? So once that goal has been clearly defined, that may also drive the requirement for the framework. So I guess that's probably also something the service provider should do. Oh my God. Okay.
And Sean, I may tell you that we're over time on the meeting, so you don't give yourself too many more action items for this year.
Okay, so no, I think this is a very good discussion. I enjoyed this, and I would like to have more of this. Instead of talking about JIRAs, but of course JIRA is important too. I think we need to start addressing a lot of issues. So I appreciate people's your engagement on this one, and I'll review this recording. I'll see what I can jot down some action items, and and potentially I will send out email to the participant on this call to maybe have some of, or I can use the VOLTHA discuss to discuss some of those, even though I don't use that too often. Okay, so I think Julie, I think your suggestion was great. So let's follow on that.
Okay.
And I appreciate everybody's involvement on this, and yeah, so we targeted this one is by the end of March to be implemented in certain form. So I thank you in advance for all your work. Thank you.
Hey, thanks everyone. Good
Thanks
call today.
everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and stop the recording. Thanks everyone.